This is Ellen. I'm a professional music teacher and I teach orchestra and band, and I heard you're having a little trouble with your new violin, so I thought I'd make this little video to help you out. So there's a couple things that go into the setup of a violin when you first get it. One of the things you'll notice is that you have to actually condition your bow before it's going to work. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you get your violin is you're going to need to get one of these if you don't have it already. This little square is called rosin. And basically it's a tree sap that we rub on the bow to make it sticky so that when we pull it across the strings, it grabs onto them and pulls, making the instrument vibrate and therefore make noise. But before we can use this, we have to give it a little help. So what you're going to want to do is take the cap off of your rosin, and you're going to want to find something that has a rough edge. A ribbed coin will work, like a quarter, or like a nickel, or even like if you have like a nail or anything sharp really. Mine's already been treated, but I'll show you what I do. So when you first get this, it's going to be completely smooth. If you rub that across the strings, none of the rosin will come off on it. What you're looking for is this white powdery stuff, and when you touch it, it should like leave almost a sticky residue on your hand. You don't want to touch it a lot, by the way. But to get it like this so that it's actually useful, you're going to take this quarter and you're just going to rub it until you've created some of these white gashes in the surface of the rosin. And ideally you want it to be mostly white on top, so you want it to look something like what mine looks like. Once it looks like that, it's ready to use on the bow. So the next thing you're going to need to do to set up your violin is you're going to grab the bow. When a bow comes in a case, especially if you've never used it before, you'll notice that the strings are kind of floppy. They move around a little, and you can see that it's not tight. There's loose hairs there. That's actually good. We don't want the bow to be tight when it's sitting in the case because it can damage it. So what you're going to need to do before you can do anything else is you need to tighten the bow. So the way I normally teach this, and you'll have to excuse me because this is mirrored. Actually, I'll turn around and show you. What you're going to want to do is I tell my students, with the bow, take your left hand, grab onto the bow, only touching the piece of wood. We don't want to touch this hair here. You're going to hold on to that, and you're going to take this little pin here on the end, and you're going to turn it away from you. 3 times ought to do it, but what you're looking for is for the hair of the bow to become straight in one line. So I'm going to turn it away from me. 1, 2, 3, and mine looks like it needs an extra one here, so I'm going to turn it a little bit more. Once you have the bow tightened, the hair should look more like this. You'll see it's all in one straight line now. There's nothing hanging off, and when I move it around, it doesn't wiggle at all. We don't want to over tighten our bows. We always want it to be just barely tight enough that you get that straight line. If you notice that there starts to be a lot of pressure in the stick, and it starts to look a little bit more like this, where it's completely parallel all the way down between the hair and the bow, you've actually over tightened it, and over time this will damage your bow. So when we tighten the bow, we only want it to be just barely tight enough so that we get that straight line. And you'll know you've done this right if your bow kind of looks like a smiley face. You can see here, it's the hair and the bow stick are farther away at the ends and closer at the middle. I can't slide my hand all the way through. It's almost like a little smiley face. It should curve a little bit like this. Once you have it in this position, then you can use the rosin on it, which will make the bow work. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the rosin. With a new bow, you're going to need to use a fair amount of it on the bow to get it working the first time. After the first time, you'll only need to put a little bit on at a time. But for your first time, what you're going to want to do is kind of go inch by inch and really give it a good rubbing all the way along its edge. Start at the bottom and just work your way up a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. I'm not going to do the whole length of my bow like that right now because mine doesn't need that and it will make it too sticky. But if your bow is brand new, you're going to need to do that. So give it a little scrubbing. Take 30 seconds to a minute and just work your way up, doing one little piece at a time. Once you finish that, you've gotten all the way to the tip over here and you've done that, give it a couple runs down the length, maybe 2 or 3 times. Once you've done that, now you can take it to the instrument and play. So, when you go to play your violin, you've never played a violin before, anytime we're playing, you want to keep your bow in between this piece here, which is called the bridge, and this black piece here called the fingerboard. This is where you're going to get the best sound on the instrument. If you go too high, or if you go too close to this bridge, it's going to give you this kind of nasty squeaky sound that we don't really want. So, now that I've rosined my bow, I can put it up to the instrument, and when I pull across the strings, I should get a nice sound. If you don't, that might mean you need more rosin, or your strings on your instrument could not be tight. That's kind of a different conversation and a little bit more challenging to deal with. So if you have trouble with the pitches on your violin, yours doesn't sound nice and pretty like this, it sounds kind of wonky and not so nice, what you're going to have to do is tune the instrument, which is a whole nother can of worms. So if you need help tuning your instrument, go ahead and give me a call. I'll have my number sent over to you. But hopefully this at least fixes your bow problem and you can get some sound out of your instrument. Okay, hope that helps, and happy musicking.